you're joining us from LA. I've been saying good morning and good afternoon all in one. And welcome to what's going to be a fantastic conversation all about climate change. If you are young and you are passionate about this subject, you have found yourself on the right link. For all those who are joining, wherever you may be, shout us in the socials or in the comments below. We would love to know where you're looking in from. My name is Swazi. I'll be your hostess with the mostess this afternoon, this evening, this morning. I'll be hosting and moderating this conversation, and we are spoiling you. We are spoiling you. We've not one, but two mayors this afternoon or this morning, and also a huge lineup when it comes to climate activists and leaders who are really making change in this department. So I'm going to bring up everyone on screen to say hi and to give us a wave. Joining us in this conversation, we have got the one, the only, the Mayor of LA. We've got Eric Garcetti on the call. Hello. We've also got the Mayor of London, our very own Sadiq Khan. Hi, Sadiq. Hey. And we've got a whole host of climate activists. We've got Saad Arma, Dominic Palmer, Kevin Patel, and Janelle Awamoyi as well joining this conversation. So there's so much to be had, so much good chat to be doing. Join us on the socials at My Life, My Say. A real important stressor is that this event is for young people by young people. So if you've got things to say, come and join the conversation, hit us up on the socials and jump in. To kick off and to give us a big introduction, and because this event definitely could not be done without our team over at the Bergen Institute, I want to say a massive welcome and hello to the wonderful Dawn. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Swazi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Well, thank you so much. And Mete warned me about your energy. I did not know what to expect, but now I see what he was saying. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. Today, we're going to talk about the YES program, which is one of the major priorities of the Berggruen Institute right now. The YES program is Youth Environmental Service. We truly believe that the time is now to engage young people and put them at the center of our climate fight. And governments all over the world should be doing it. It's not only because the climate window is closing and we have a limited amount of time to get there, but coming out of the pandemic, young people need opportunities. And right now, on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, governments are putting massive amounts of investment into climate change as part of their pandemic recovery. We believe those dollars should be directed to and by young people. It's really important to put the reins of this fight in their hands. It is their future that is at stake after all, and they could have and should have and probably will have the political will to make tough decisions that the older generations are struggling with. It's one of the reasons we haven't actually met our goals yet, and we've made little progress on climate change. So I'm really excited to have this event taking place because we have two gentlemen here who are mayors of major cities. Thank you so much, Mayor Garcetti and Mayor Khan, for being with us today. Who are finding ways to make young people part of their decision-making process. And I'm hopeful that they will share some of those things that they're doing here. Climate change is a global issue, but it plays out very locally. Mayors are so incredibly important to how this fight plays out, and decisions are made every day in cities that move the needle in one direction or the other. So we're very grateful to have everybody here today, the climate activists who have so much to contribute and the mayors who are willing to listen, and thank you so much. So I'm going to hand it over to Mete. Mete is the founder of My Life, My Say and our partner in this program. So over to you, Mete.
Thank you, Dawn. Firstly, let me thank you and the Berggruen Institute for this brilliant collaboration, bringing together young people both from the UK and the US around an issue that we know we passionately care about. I'd also want to take this opportunity to thank the amazing Swazi, who is a My Life, My Say trustee and a brilliant radio presenter host in the UK, one of the best in my opinion and one to watch for the future. And also a massive thank you to Mayor Garcetti and our Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, for being here today. I know you're both very busy people, so to be giving up your time, we really appreciate it. As My Life, My Say, we exist to amplify young people's voices and to get young people going out to make sure that they're registered and turning up to vote. And this is yet another big issue that we know young people passionately care about climate change. And we're really proud to be partnering with the Berggruen Institute to make sure that we're giving young people on both sides of the Atlantic a voice on this issue. So I won't take too long because I know you never came here to listen to me. You came here to listen to both our very impressive mayors. But thank you so much for all your support and for joining us today. And we look forward to continuing this conversation in the future. So back over to you, Swazi.
Thank you, Mete. Looking very sharp over in your shirt. I hear that we have stolen the LA sunshine and LA's got our rain. So it's a good day. It's a good day in here in London. If you have just joined us, welcome, welcome. This is a big conversation all about climate change. And if you've been to any one of our events before, climate change always ranks very high up on the scale when it comes to young people and what we're passionate about talking about. And so I want to be talking to some of our very special guests this evening, and that's given us a very mayoral spin on the event. So it's a pleasure to welcome the Mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Garcetti, and also our very own Mayor Sadiq as well, who will both be talking to us about what they're doing and giving us a snapshot of the work around climate change and how they're involving young voices. If you're a young person that's joined us, it is really about how we can be involved in the conversation as well. So Mayor Garcetti, I'm going to hand it over to you. Give us a snapshot about LA and your youth involvement as well.
Well, thank you, Swazi. Thank you to you so much for hosting us. Thank you, Don, and to the Berggruen Institute for making this happen. And thank you, Mete, for My Life, My Say. And whenever you say there's an event I can do with Mayor Sadiq Khan, I'm there. And congratulations on your re-election. I'm so excited. LA and London aren't officially sister cities, but they might as well be. And we're so close in so many ways. And I want to thank you for being a great brother mayor that inspires me every single day. Look, I want to speak to the young people. That was the other draw for me. You know, I got into activism as a young person around the environment. Always hated hearing I was going to be the leader of tomorrow, because I believe you're the leaders of today. You're not just part of the conversation, you're co-authors and you're co-navigators and co-architects of this moment and of the earth that you're going to inherit and the work that needs to be done. You know, when I became chair of C40, a London-based organization of the top 100 cities of the world and their mayors, I set out to do three things. One, which is to push the idea of a global Green New Deal, which would marry ecological and economic justice together. Two was to look at this as a decade of action. It's too late to reverse the damage we've done, but it's not too late to mitigate. And so the 2020s literally are the make or break decade, and one which we have to push our ambition, push our policies, push our actions further than ever before. And three, I wanted to build an inclusive coalition, really mostly that's rooted on the youth activism globally that we've seen. Of course, the civil society sectors, the residents, the business, everybody else, but it was really about young people in particular. And here in LA, we declared a climate emergency, one of the first cities in the world to do so. And we established years ago now, when I became mayor, the Mayor's Youth Council for Climate Action. Kevin's a alum of it, many people who are the young people who I said, you don't just have a place on the table, you are formal advisors to the mayor of Los Angeles, the third largest metro economy in the world now. And we need you to tell us what we need to be doing and to take responsibility for doing it as well. And that was the model for C40 launching what is called the Global Youth and Mayors Forum, which now has come together across every continent, besides Antarctica, of course, every continent of the globe, with young people and their mayors pushing each other and pushing the globe to form this network of action. And I think that mayors and youth are perfect to join in this coalition together. Because if you look at the world right now, of those almost 100 cities that are part of C40, over half of them have met or exceeded our goals and commitments in the Paris Climate Accord. Compare that to national governments, where only 2 of more than 200 countries have done the same. So the moment that you feel like this is a problem too big or politicians are acting too slow, just look where you live. And if you're one of those cities where you're not meeting that, push your mayors, push your councils, push your government to do that. But also be inspired by the fact that we collectively are doing that. In Los Angeles, for instance, we were able to reduce our emissions 13% in a single year while we boosted employment by 11%. We have been able to see these two things do go hand in hand. And so the big 5 things we're doing in our in our LA's Green New Deal is zero emissions transportation, zero emissions buildings, zero emissions electricity, zero waste, and zero wastewater. They're big, bold goals with metrics that you can hold me accountable by each year. So when young people say, hey, you missed the mark last year on that thing you said you do, I can say you're right. But when we exceed the mark, we can say that's because we've all done it together, and we've hit 97% of those goals so far. Last thing I want to say is we're very excited to be in the UK later this year. And as the COP comes to Glasgow, one of the things that cities are leading is the Cities Race to Zero. It will be the biggest climate pledge in the world this year of any level of government. At least 1,000 cities who will take a kind of Paris 2.0 pledge and make sure that we get to a world where we have our emissions by decade's end across these cities. In Los Angeles, we are taking the pledge to be 100% carbon neutral by 2035, and we're going to be 97% of the way there by 2030. So the pledge to get halfway there for the rest of the world is going to be, something that is achievable, and we're showing that away as well. So let me toss it back to you and Mayor Khan, and let's get into the conversation with young people. And thank you for the honor of starting my day with you as you end yours.
Oh, no, amazing. Thank you. And yeah, just to echo yourself and what Dawn had said about accountability and how young people are co-authors. Like, where's the retweet button on Zoom, please? This is really, really important for so many young people to get involved. Let me jump over to London now. Mayor Khan is joined here. And again, congratulations on your re-election. It's so good to have you on the call. Let us know your plans behind climate change and how you're involving young people as well.
Well, thank you, Swazi, for that introduction. And can I reassure everyone else that's 100% renewable energy from Swazi. Can I also thank Mete at My Life, My Say, but also Dawn at the Berggruen Institute, and also Yale at the US Embassy in London for organising this virtual climate town hall. It's a real privilege to be here with the Mayor of Los Angeles and with so many young people who are passionate about tackling climate change. I want to begin by paying tribute to Eric for the exemplary climate leadership he's shown, not just in LA, but on the international stage, as you've just heard. In Eric's role as chair of the C40 group of cities, I've had the pleasure of working closely with him to help and encourage other world cities to adopt ambitious climate policies, including divesting from fossil fuel companies and developing solutions to reduce air pollution. He is a good friend, and it's a pleasure to be on this platform with him. The great strides, Eric, your city has taken, and the example you're setting personally is critical to inspiring others to aim higher. That's certainly true here in London. We relish the challenge of competing with LA and other members of the C40 to be the world's greenest city. This is precisely the kind of friendly competition we need, where we're constantly pushing each other to up our game, go further, and deliver on our climate objectives. With a new president in the White House and COP26 fast approaching, I'm hopeful that the special relationship can once again be the basis for great progress in the world. But regardless what happens in Glasgow later this year, you can be sure that from London to LA, our cities won't shirk from the historic responsibility we have to our climate, our young people, and to future generations. In London, we're very much aware of what's at stake, and we're taking action. This includes a bold target of making our city zero carbon by 2030. Some of the most ambitious policies in the world to tackle air pollution, plans to expand our world-leading ultra-low emission zones, huge investment to make it easier for Londoners to walk and cycle, more zero-emission buses and taxis, and our flagship new Green Deal for London, which will help to accelerate the shift to renewable energy sources, grow our low-carbon economy, and create much-needed green jobs. As we seek to bounce back from the pandemic and build a better London that is fairer, more equal, and more sustainable, these policies will be key to tackling injustice and inequality and to delivering a brighter future for our city. However, we're not going to be able to realize that future without the energy and enthusiasm and the input and ideas of our young people. Along with our cities, you also have a crucial role to play, as Eric said, in tackling this monumental challenge, because ultimately it will be your generation that shapes and puts into practice our climate policies. It will be your generation that helps to decarbonize our society and economy. And most importantly, it will be your generation that keeps up the pressure on those in positions of power, making sure that we do right by you and our planet. And that's why I'm so delighted to be part of this event and to have the opportunity to answer your questions. Thank you, Swazi.
Thank you, Sadiq. Thank you so much. And yes, when he's saying it's you, it's us young people. Do you know what I mean? So if you've just locked in and you're feeling the weight of the responsibility, it's good. It's good. That's why we're having this conversation. I've got a question for both of you, Sadiq and Eric, and I would love to welcome those who have locked in. Throw in your questions, whether that's on socials or the YouTube chat. We're going to be collecting questions in. We've got a range of so many great leaders who are also going to be posing their questions to you. But I want to start off here, really. Both LA and London, both cities are facing many challenges, including managing the pandemic, economic recovery, tackling homelessness, police and community relationships. So I want to ask you both, and Eric, maybe I'll start with you. Is it really possible to make climate change a priority when there's so many other issues to address?
Absolutely. It's a necessity, and you have to tie those things together wherever possible. It's not only, we know as mayors, you don't have a choice to choose between tackling racial justice, economic opportunity, climate justice. You have to do all the above at the same time. But too often they exist in vacuums by themselves. For instance, during a pandemic, it's a moment to talk about public health, not just around COVID, but around climate, because there's so many parallels that are the same. When things are shut down economically, we're accelerating bus lanes and making sure that we have our public transit build out. We're building 15 new lines here in Los Angeles, that those things get accelerated. When we look at police violence and racial justice and alternatives to bring a badge to bear on every social ill that we have, those sorts of things have to go hand in hand with the idea of the same communities that receive the negative end of police brutality or the economic disinvestment are the same places that are breathing the dirtiest air and that have, oil wells in their backyard here in Los Angeles. So absolutely, you have to do them together. You have to do them always, and you have to do each one of them.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really good for us here in London to get a glimpse of what your world looks like and know that we're not worlds apart. There's so many similarities. Sadiq, what about yourself? London, we face so many things that could be at the top of the priority list. So how does climate change also just weigh in with that as well?
Like I say, Eric is spot on. The issue of climate change, the issue of fighting poor air quality is an issue of social justice. Just like in LA, in London, those who suffer the worst consequences of poor quality air are Black, Asian, minority ethnic Londoners. They're the poorest Londoners. And I think, I hate to use the word opportunity when it comes to a global pandemic, but I think there's an opportunity in relation to our recovery from this global pandemic to have a green recovery and a socially just recovery. And I think this argument where to fight climate change, you've got to choose between that and our economy is a false choice. I think it's possible to fight climate change, improve the quality of it at the same time as a green recovery and ensuring that the new jobs go to those communities who have previously missed out. And I think when you look at the figures, Swazi in London, those who have, I'm afraid, children with the stunted lungs, the adults with a whole host of health issues from asthma, heart disease to cancer, I'm afraid they happen to be Black Londoners and poorer Londoners. So if you believe in social justice, if you believe in equality, you've got to believe in fighting climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to hear from young people right now. So as well as we've got the Mayor of London and the Mayor of LA, we're really doing global energy this afternoon. Do you know what I mean? I'm also joined by so many incredible young activists when it comes to climate change. And we've been given questions from you, so keep them coming through on the socials. But I want to head over to Saad Arma next, environmentalist, activist, and the co-founder of Plus One Vote. We meet again, Saad. It's good to have you. How are you?
I'm doing great, Swarzy. Always loving your energy. We could power the whole world on you alone.
Listen, I'm coming for your background, I'm really loving your background here, Saad. I know you've got a question for Eric as well. So yeah, jump right in. We'd love to hear from you.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. And hello, Mayor Garcetti. I first wanted to start by thanking you. My organization, Plus One Vote, is all about getting young people and people of color out to vote. And when we launched in 2018, I remember Alyssa Milano did a video and you were her plus one. And then Jimmy Kimmel was your plus one. And we just had all this energy and excitement around people getting out the vote. So thank you for helping us select some awesome people into Congress during the midterm elections. So in addition to my work with Plus One Vote, I'm also a climate activist and an expert reviewer for the IPCC. And as I'm sure you know, the IPCC, as well as the UN, made clear that we need to reduce our carbon emissions every single year, 7.5% from 2020 until 2030 in order to, limit global warming. And you mentioned earlier that, the United States this year reduced its emissions about 13%, and globally there was about a 7% reduction. That number is largely a fluke as a result of the pandemic, right? A lot of the emissions reductions that we've seen over the last year were the result of people having less transportation, people having this radical shift in their lifestyles as a result of the pandemic. And so and studies also show that a lot of those emissions will rebound as a result of people going back to work and the economy reopening. So my question is, what are your plans to actually this year reduce the emissions of LA by 7.5% in line with those guidelines of the IPCC and the UN?
Absolutely. Great to be with you, Saad. So that's an average for all cities around the world. And we're actually ahead of that and continuing to be ahead. We're about 24% down from our baseline of 1990 and on track to be 50% down by 2025 in less than 4 years. So there's so many things to describe of how we're getting there, but the boldest of them was partnering with our National Renewable Energy Lab and a supercomputer and doing the first study in US history and one of the first in the world that other cities are calling us about to run all the permutations of how we can get to 100% renewable energy. We own our own electricity company, which is rare for some cities globally, but that means we also control our own destiny. So when I mentioned that 13%, it was actually 11. That wasn't about this year. That was a few years ago when we closed down a coal plant. That's a permanent baseline reduction. We're continuing to do that. In fact, we had a day recently which 93% of our electricity came from renewable sources. Now, we're about 40% right now. We'll get to, as I mentioned, by the end of the decade, 97% carbon-free electricity generation, or the neutrality of carbon, but it will not be by buying credits. It will not be by assuming that there's some carbon sink. It'll be by changing the electricity that we have. So, we hope to inspire other places to do the same. It's tougher for cities when they don't control their own electric companies, but that's where activism comes in, where we push the private electric companies to do the same thing. We're the #1 solar city in America, and we're going to be continuing to do that, not just in huge solar arrays in the desert, but also on rooftops, especially in communities of color, where solar power was seen as something that was whiter and richer in the nicer parts of town. It's everything from putting shade trees in the communities that are hottest and usually poorest, and that have the most people of color living in them as well, and making sure that we have all hands on. And then finally, really, it's around transportation. For us in Los Angeles, it's not only zero emission vehicles, but it's 15 new rail lines and rapid transit lines. And something I've been pushing for, making transit free, which I hope by September we will do, at least with students and community college students as the first ones, and maybe 6 months later for all of our low-income residents to ride transit for free in the city of Los Angeles, and finally give people a way to not pollute when they get around.
Thank you. And thank you, Saad, as well for your question. A really excellent question that also goes back to the importance of people and caring for people when we're talking about climate change as well. Amazing. Going to move on next. And just a reminder, we've got so many questions to come through, so we can keep our answers just short and sweet so we can get through as many questions as possible. I want to jump over to Dominique, who's climate justice activist and organizer within Fridays for Future International. Welcome, sis. I know you've got a question for Mayor Khan, so over to you.
Hi, thank you, Shwazi, for the introduction and your incredible energy. And also hi to Mayor Khan, and thank you for joining today and engaging with young people in this conversation. My question is related to the equitable green recovery that you mentioned earlier, as I'm also focused on environmental justice interlinked with social issues. So my question specifically is on equitable climate action. So with the impacts of the climate crisis disproportionately affecting communities of colour, such as air pollution and less access to green spaces, going forward, what concrete steps will be taken to ensure that social justice is met, as well as acting on climate policies in line with the crucial 1.5 degrees Celsius targets?
Yeah, that's a cracking question, Tommy. Look, the reason why Eric and I, and we both share this, got into politics because of our passion for social justice. And this is a good example of social injustice caused by poor policies in relation to climate change, in relation to air quality and so forth. So what we're doing, Dominic, is to, as part of our Green New Deal, we're going to make sure that the recovery is one that addresses the structural inequalities that have been exposed and exacerbated by this pandemic. You know this as well as I do. Look at the numbers of Black people who have died because of the pandemic. Look at those in 0 hours contracts and those in the gig economy who've lost their jobs because of this pandemic and so forth. So the pandemic has both exposed and exacerbated these structural inequalities, including racial inequalities. So as part of our green recovery, what we're doing is making sure our resources are targeted towards those communities that have suffered the most. So last week I announced, as part of our retrofit revolution, a package up to £10 billion to make sure that we're addressing climate change, but also creating jobs. And what we're doing, Dominic, is targeting the new jobs in those parts of London where the largest number of Londoners are currently furloughed and which are the most ethnically diverse. So we're going to make sure the new green academies, where Londoners get the skills to retrofit, where Londoners get the skills to fit solar panels, where Londoners get the skills to put the electric charging points in, are targeted towards those communities who've historically suffered larger numbers of unemployment, who've historically been in the 0 hours insecure jobs, and so they can't take time off when they need to isolate and so forth, because I think there's an opportunity for us, and again, apologies for using the word opportunity when it comes to a pandemic, to use this pandemic as a way to address the structural inequalities. And Dominic, you know this better than I do. Who are the kids who've got the stunted lungs? Who are the adults with asthma? So I think that there's possibility of a virtuous solution to this awful, which will be hopefully going forward, generations will benefit from us doing this. And it needs people like you to put pressure on our national politicians as well, so they understand that we can, Eric and I've got a choice. We can either be the last generation that don't get it or the first generation that get it.
Yeah. And thank you both, Mayor Khan and Mayor Garcetti, just for your honest and open answers. We don't want to talk around these subjects. We want to speak directly to them. And so, Dominique, thank you. Thank you again for your question, sis. Jumping over next to Kevin Patel, a huge fan of climate activism and doing so much work. I know you've got a question for Mayor Garcetti, and I know you guys know each other. So yeah, fire away, Kevin. It's over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me to this event. Mayor Eric Garcetti, I've known you for quite a while, and also been part of your youth council. So I'll just get straight to the point to the question. The city's Green New Deal makes a good step in the right direction on climate, but scarcely mentions petroleum. What are some concrete steps or motions you will commit Los Angeles to making surrounding oil, and about the 1,200-foot barrier proposal Angelenos have been making for quite a long time?
Absolutely. And thank you, Kevin, for that. It's great to see you again as well. A lot of people in London may not know this, but Los Angeles is built on top of a massive oil field. It's the largest oil field in any urban setting in America, the third largest oil field anywhere in America. There's a slightly bigger one in Texas and a bigger one in Alaska. But this town, everybody thinks, was settled by people in Hollywood. It was actually settled by oil barons. So our economy has been rooted for so long in what then was helpful and now is absolutely destructive to our city, our nation, and our world. This has been on top of mind for me. In April, during my Save the City address, I announced that we would have a moratorium on all new oil and gas drilling anywhere in the city of Los Angeles. And we have actually, it's not just a minor part of the LA's Green New Deal. We set key milestones, and we have reduced by 43%, exceeding the pace that we put forward, the reduction of oil, the production of oil in Los Angeles. And that's really important, not to just give lip service to one day it'll all be gone, but to actually work towards it. For existing sites, though, which is what you asked about, we have different efforts underway. One, it's taking our Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas. I don't know if you have an Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Sadiq, but in Los Angeles, it's one of our actual positions that was left unfilled. It used to exist to help oil people get their oil wells in Los Angeles. Now we want to empower it to be a watchdog with powers and some teeth to go into strict compliance with existing health. I've committed to the 1,200. I say, as soon as the city council passes something, I will sign that, whether it's 1,200, 2,000, 1,000, that they've heard that loud and clear. And so I would urge you to continue to push the council to take that action. And we've committed to $3.5 million to look at amortization studies at oil and gas production sites, because everybody says you close those down, you're going to have a bill for $10 billion. I think it's the opposite. I think that we should look at legal actions to anybody who claims that on us, and we should tell them what the expense has been to our health for these decades of having these in people's backyards. So I will sign the most aggressive barrier, but I think now the conversation is moving away, not just from buffer zones, but what we are talking about is a sunset strategy for oil and gas in Los Angeles, period.
Yeah, great answer and great question. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being part of today. Really good to have you. Jumping over to my good sis, Janelle, who's on the call, looking gorgeous this Monday afternoon as well. An award-winning journalist, campaigner, and a journalist at BBC News. She does not sleep. She's got a question for Mayor Khan. Janelle, it's over to you, girl.
Thank you so much. This is actually a sustainable fashion dress, so to make sure, so yeah, trying to buy sustainably, and I believe obviously fashion's a great way to do so. And thanks so much for inviting me. Mayor Khan, it's great to speak with you again. I actually spoke to you in Camden when you introduced the tea tax, all about trying to reduce pollution with the hydrogen buses. So it's great to speak to you again about climate change, especially. And my question to you is that you've pledged that London will be a net carbon neutral city by 2030. This is very ambitious, but how does a city that's clogged with traffic and densely packed with carbon emitting processes from fossil fueled energy to steel skyscrapers achieve such a goal?
Well, Janelle, let me tell you a true story. So I was at a conference explaining my tea tax, the toxicity charge, and Eric came up to me and said, listen, brother, us Americans have a history of being anti a tea tax. You remember the Boston Tea Party. And so as a good American brother, Eric advised me against using a tea tax as a way of promoting our green policies overseas. Eric, we've rebranded it the ultra low emission zone. So thanks for the advice. But Janelle, what Janelle is referring to, Eric, is you know this, but basically we're trying to get rid of the carbon emissions, the particulate matter, the nitrogen dioxide, the NOx from transport on our roads. And so the great news is, Janelle, the ultra low emission zone, which followed the tea tax, has led to a massive reduction in toxic air in the heart of our city, a 94% reduction. It's remarkable. The number of schools that are now in areas where the air is lawful has gone down by 97%. So it shows the difference we can make by changing our policies. And actually, one of the things I was going to ask you for on this call from London is I need your support, because there's now a pushback from those who love their cars and those who are anti-progress against my extension. I want to have an 18-fold increase in my ULEZ going to the North Circular and South Circular from this October. So any support you can give in relation to promoting our policies appreciated. But you know, you raise a really important point. So yes, I have announced I want us to go to zero carbon by 2030. I'd rather be really ambitious and miss my target by little than be unambitious. And so the key policy we've got to get there is encouraging people to walk, cycle, use public transport. That's why I've increased 5-fold the amount of cycling lanes across our city. That's one of the reasons why we've widened our pavements, but also I froze our fares for 5 years to encourage more people to use public transport as well. What we can't afford to have, Janelle, is a car-led recovery, because that will lead to one health crisis, COVID, being replaced by another one, poor quality air, carbon emissions, particulate matter, and NOx. But also we've got to do, Janelle, is to make sure that we have clean energy. One of the things I often talk about is my envy at the mayors in America and the powers and resources they have. Eric, I don't envy you have an office of petroleum and natural gas. I don't want that office in London. What we are doing though, Janelle, is making sure that we have clean energy. The biggest buyer of energy in London is TfL. So we've now got a power purchase agreement, and part of the deal is we want renewable energy on our public transport system. Electric buses, the underground run on renewable energies as well. And we're also going to be retrofitting our buildings. I announced last week a retrofitting revolution. So, Janelle, COP26 is this year in Glasgow. It's in our country. We've got to use the energy. Eric's chair of C40, a really passionate chair of C40. Eric's managed to persuade the UN to take on board the views of cities, not just countries. That's really important. And so we're hoping that the C40 this year in Glasgow will have the energy of the 90+ cities across the globe saying to the UN, you need us, we need you to make sure we get to zero carbon as soon as possible. And that means in London by 2030.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sadiq. And funny enough, it leads me on to one of the questions that have come through the Q&A, the chat box that you guys have been sending in to us. So thank you to everyone who's got involved on the socials. I'm wary of time. We've got closing remarks coming up. And before I introduce Shahzad Affair, Yael Lempert to give her thoughts as well towards the conversation. But before I do, I wonder if I can get your answers within a minute, and a minute on the clock, I mean. So Mayor of London, let me come to you first. One of the questions from the chat has been, how can we make climate change as serious to the world as COVID has been? And you touched upon it really about not just making countries aware, but cities active as well. So let me go to you first before I come over to Mayor Garcetti next.
Well, the answer is you guys. We need people power. We need citizens from across the globe to put pressure on people in positions of power and influence. COP26 is taking place this November in our country, and we need our governments to be incentivized to make sure that they have policies that address the needs of our planet. We've now got a new president in the White House who believes climate change is happening and wants policies to address that. You've heard what President Biden has said about his commitment to this issue, and that's putting pressure on our Prime Minister. We've got to make sure that our government hears loudly and clearly this is an issue that will affect how we vote at the next election. We need to make sure we have plans to get to zero carbon as soon as possible, in my view, not by 2050, but by 2030.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And Garcetti, what about yourself? How can we make climate change as serious to the world as COVID, as the whole pandemic has been?
Well, we're all very blessed to live in two countries where we feel like COVID is in the rearview mirror. And I think first we have to remember that it's not for the world, and talk about vaccine equity. And there's literally mayors who are not going to be able to come to Glasgow because their countries aren't looking at the end of COVID for another year or more. So I think before we move on, we have to remind ourselves that they are tied together. And then second, I think that it is about people making that connection of public health. People learn more about public health than they ever have this year. Don't let that be for naught. Take that knowledge, that new base, and convert it from COVID to climate, because climate is a public health crisis.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you also to the climate leaders. We've had Dominique, we've had Janelle, Saad and Kevin as well. And I want to head over really to both of you, both mayors who have joined us. We've gone from London to LA for us who are here, and it's been such a good conversation to involve young people to be part of the discussion as much as you guys who are at the top with the decision makers. But we'd love to get your closing remarks as well. So Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, let me come to you first.
Well, there's an amazing fact, Swazi, which is at the moment, roughly speaking, about 55% of the world's population lives in cities. 55%. That's going to go up to 70% over the course of the next 20 years. And so, to quote a saying of one of Eric's former colleagues, if the 19th century was known as the century of empires, the 20th century as a century of nation states, the 21st century is about cities and mayors. And we've got the opportunity to provide some of the solutions to some of the challenges that our planet faces. I think it's really important that we don't replace one health crisis, COVID, with another one, the consequences of poor quality air caused by our policies that are leading to climate change. I'm really excited by the energy we're seeing in cities across the globe, including mayors across the globe. I think we've got a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make significant changes in national government's policies to fight climate change. And I think Eric and I have a choice, which we've chosen to make, but I think the key issue is whether President Biden's and Prime Minister Johnson and others choose to make, which is this: are we going to be the first generation that gets it and has policies that adequately address the issues of climate change, or will we be the last generation that doesn't get it?
Yeah, brilliant. And a big question with a big question mark at the end of it, but a much needed question to be said. And Eric Garcetti as well, Mayor of LA, what about yourself? We would love your closing remarks for this afternoon.
So I'm an organizer by background. So here's the to-dos. One, make sure your city is joining Race to Zero. If you're in London or LA, you're already covered. So if you live in LA or London, get 3 more cities elsewhere through friends that you know to pledge through their governments to join the Race to Zero 1,000 plus city pledge this November in Scotland. 2, consume less, and reduce the carbon intensity of what you do consume. Those 2 things, organizing and making sure that folks are coming together in this global coalition that's coming together this year in the city level. And secondly, doing that at the person level. And then the third thing I'll say as activists, hit the streets, continue the pressure on the streets, but cross the street too. Cross the street and come into your city halls, come into government, come into not just saying what we're against and who's not good enough, We're collective. We can't dehumanize each other, whether it's somebody with a government title or whether it's somebody with an activist title, whether it's a person of color or whether it's a person at the national level. We all have too much work to do to find our division. So keep the pressure up on the street, but also learn the skills to cross the street, to come indoors, to negotiate, to compromise, but to continue pushing forward, and we can get this done together. It's been a real honor to be with you. Thank you, Swazi. Thank you, Mayor Khan, and thanks for organizing this.
No, thank you so much. That's fantastic answers. And just to tweeze a little bit more and to push you if I can, how can I ensure that you guys are going to keep on working with young people? And what do you find works when you do engage with young people? Let me come to Sadiq first. What works and how can you keep on engaging young people through all that you're doing?
Well, listen, Meta's got my mobile number. I've got no choice, man.
Yeah, you're locked in.
My life, my say, man. They're in a nice sort of way. Eric, you'll appreciate this, but they're a nice pain, and it's good to be a nice pain. But it's important. Listen, if you don't chivvy and pressurize us, you know, out of sight, out of mind. You know, so you may have decent people, you know, in City Hall in LA and London, but you know, constantly remind us these things matter to you. But Eric was saying really important. We can't be an echo chamber. Don't just speak to those who are already converted. He made a really important point about crossing the road to speak to, listen to, and engage with those who aren't quite persuaded why these things matter, including young people and older people as well. And I said this to Janelle, I said this to Dominique as well. In London, we've got too many people who don't understand why this issue is important. And you know, my most favorite president ever, and yeah, you'll appreciate this, was a guy called Jed Bartlett. And Jed Bartlett, I'm afraid he's a fictional president, but President Bartlett said, decisions are made by those that show up. And Aaron Sorkin wrote some great lines. That's my favorite. Decisions are made by those that show up. Make sure you show up.
Yeah, you have to. And I think for myself and those who are watching, it's been really encouraging for you to know the young people who are on call. Kevin, you know, in Mayor Garcetti and vice versa. And it's been really, you know, sometimes you guys can feel very far away, but it's nice when you feel close enough to ask questions and then to get honest answers as well. And so for you, Mayor of LA, how are you going to make sure that you stay plugged in with young people and take their questions further?
Well, demand a youth council if you're a young person. Make sure that there's a youth climate council in your city. It's something that we're pushing around the world right now. Kevin was a part of it. That doesn't mean he always agrees with me. It's not being co-opted to come into City Hall. It's a place to actually be at the table, just like the rest of my team. You know, Lauren Faber-O'Connor, my chief sustainability officer, is on here. She might not agree with me all the time. Your role is to push. Your role is to advocate. And when you disagree, to move on to figure out how you get to the next place, but to always be there, not to sign off. So I would say the way you institutionalize it is by institutionalizing it.
Amazing. Kevin's like, yeah, I don't always agree. I'm there to ask those difficult questions. I love it. Before I wrap up this afternoon, this morning, wherever you may be around the world, I want to say a massive thank you to My Life, My Say, to Mete and the whole team. I want to say a massive thank you to Berggruen Institute as well, and also hand over next to Chargé d'Affaires, Yael Lempert, for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Swazi. A huge, massive thank you to you and to Mete and for everybody for being here and having this conversation today. My Life, My Say is so great at holding the conversations that really matter. And it's been fantastic to hear directly from both of these incredible mayors today. As two of the most influential and trend-setting cities in the world, people are always looking so closely to see what LA and London are doing. And that pains me a little bit to say as a New Yorker, but it's the truth. And what they see with both of these cities are two cities and two leaders who are really determined to win the fight against climate change. And they're setting an example. You are setting an example that we all need to follow, because we know that we've only got the narrowest of windows to stop catastrophic climate change. And that means we need everybody on board and pulling in the same direction and really stepping up. That goes for every individual, every community, every business, every university, every city, and every country. And speaking for the US government, President Biden has made the fight against climate change his #1 priority. And he set an ambitious new target to get us to net zero by 2050. I know that that's not soon enough for some on this call, but that's what we're working towards. And the UK government has also set a new target to speed up the British effort. And at the end of the year, as has been mentioned, both of our countries are going to be joining forces at the COP in Glasgow to get the whole of the international community doing the same thing. This is essentially the world's moment of truth. And it's time we really make the tough choices. We take action and we really address this crisis with the seriousness that it deserves. So let's keep having these conversations. Please, let's keep building up the pressure. I couldn't agree more with what was said on that front. And let's keep working together, partnering across the Atlantic, person to person, city to city, and country to country. And we're going to keep on doing so until we succeed in building that cleaner, greener, and more equitable world that we all want to see. So I know, Swarzy, you want me to wrap it up. So that's it. I'm done. Thank you all so much. What an incredible and inspiring conversation.
Oh, Yael, you talk about my energy. You need to watch Yael, you know. She's the one that's going to come and pick me. So thank you so much again to the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, to the Mayor of LA, Eric Garcetti, and to all of our special guests, and to everyone who's made today happen. These events don't just happen on Zoom. Do you know what I mean? It takes a lot of work. So thank you to Dawn and to Mete, to the Bergen Institute, to Dominique, to Janelle, to Saad, to Kevin, to everyone involved. We cannot wait to have another round two. Part two is soon to come. I've been Swarzy. You've been watching the Fight for Climate Change. It's been a big conversation. Follow us all over the socials and we'll keep you plugged for next time. Take care. Stay safe. Bye.
Stay safe.